So excited to have you here. Holly and Heidi, it's good to see you again. I saw you just a little over an hour ago. And Holly left. Okay, so hi Heidi and Tanisha. It's us. It's my name's Laura Schmuldt. I have kind of a funny last name, so please just call me Laura. That's totally fine. I teach in a counselor ed program, the University of the Cumberlands. It's in Kentucky, but we are a distance program, and we actually teach our classes using Zoom, just like we're doing right now. And so I live in North Carolina, in Wilmington. I also have a small private called Starfish Counseling and Consulting. So could I just hear from each of you, either say it out loud or put it in the chat box, where you live and what it is that you do, please?
So I'm Heidi. I'm from Minnesota. Okay. So what? I'm from Minnesota. What I do for a job, or what I do for my school, or both?
Whatever.
Oh, okay. I just think it's such a big question, right? So I have two jobs. One agency that I work at right now. I work with youth that have done, seen, or experienced crime in some way. Also work with the diversion people in the county attorney's office, as well as work with our young people that are in shelter and family reunification. So that's one of my jobs. And then the other job, I work with 4 men that are on commitments and live in a home and have severe mental health, ranging from bipolar, schizophrenia, things like that. So that's during the day and at night.
Wow, you're a busy lady. You have some great experience, Heidi. Thank you. How about you, Tanisha? Where do you live? And if you don't mind, what do you do?
Well, I'm in Maryland, and I'm a medical technologist / technician. I'm not in the psychology field yet. I'm a graduate student.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. We're glad to have you. And Renarda, if you don't mind telling us where you live and what it is you do. Okay, well, so we're here to talk about group counseling. I've taught it every semester for 12 years. I love it. If that's all I could be happy. And we do it. We do group counseling right in Zoom. In Zoom, you can do, I don't know if you know this, guys, but you can make breakout. And so I split the class into 2 halves into breakout rooms, and they rotate being group leaders and group members. And we have somebody joining us on the phone. Is that you, Maurice? No? Okay. So I'm just going to kind of power through this. It is, I know in Central Time, it's 5 o'clock on Friday, so I did not expect anybody to show up. So I'm happy to see you, and please just jump in anytime with questions or comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. So anybody heard of therapeutic documentation or therapeutic letter writing? Have you ever heard of any of that stuff? Okay, so
I've heard it from the art perspective, when they're doing artwork. Is it similar?
Oh, very cool. That's a great example, Heidi. This is more like writing. We have to see clients and we have to usually do case notes, but making the case notes something that is leads to client growth, and I'll show how we do that. So documentation, I think this is probably why I got out of community mental health. The just obscene amounts of paperwork and documentation and case notes, and it often seemed like you're writing something that nobody's even going to ever read. And I don't want to discourage you all that are just getting into the field. I think now there's a lot of advances in software that make it easier to do, but back when I was out of school, it was like pen and paper. And so those are the 2 articles that sort of provide the theoretical foundation for what I'm about to talk about. The first article is by primarily by a woman named Mei Wei Chen, and she was my professor in my master's program, and she teaches in Chicago at Northeastern Illinois University. I am from Chicago. And then the other one is, of course, Yalom, and Theory and Practice of Group Psychotherapy. I think it's in its 16th edition. I still have mine from the 4th edition. So the overview of this is that we're going to talk about how you can do a case note in using specific language to make it a change agent, something that helps the client change and grow. It has shown this idea of therapeutic letter writing. There's been a lot of research on that in individual therapy, where the counselor actually writes a letter to their client from time to time saying, like, this is the growth I've seen in you. Boy, this is what I've seen you overcome, that kind of thing. Real strength-based language. So this is grounded in social constructionism and narrative therapy, if you're familiar with those. And it takes what is usually a time-consuming, non-therapeutic thing, documentation, and makes it a functional intervention. So what we know about documentation, if you go to see a counselor, they're writing down something about you. You just don't really know what. And so for some people to know that something is written down, that whatever that something is, they don't know what it is. Most people don't say, can I see my case notes? That can be anxiety producing. And it might inhibit you if you think things are going to be written down. And that could adversely impact the counseling relationship. So when the descriptions and conceptualizations and case notes are kept from clients, the counselor's transparency decreases. And there's an unnecessary element of mystery, okay? So oftentimes the language we use in case notes, look, I have had jobs where, because we're counselors, we think from often a strength-based point of view, where I've written up a case note showing how a client has improved, and I have had it returned to me saying I made the client look good. And how are we going to get funding if we make the client look good? To me, that is like horrifying, that we have to paint them in the worst light possible to justify, third-party reimbursement, for example. So this kind of reductionistic, problem-saturated language can dehumanize our clients. It makes them objects, okay? And if our client reads their documents, this official language that we use, it might lower their self-esteem. It might perpetuate helplessness, hopelessness. It can create fear about how the language used in those files may follow them into their careers, okay? So what is this thing called a therapeutic document? Well, you're basically doing is writing a summary, and I'm talking specifically now for using it in group. It's a summary of the group session. It's the notes that the counselor keeps after each session and turns it into a supporting agent for the client. So what we do in our classes, students take turns being a group member, and then they also lead the group. And after they lead the group, I have the group members, always, you guys, when you co-lead a group, you and that co-leader should spend about 15 minutes after the group together, processing the group, talking about what happened. And then I have those leaders write up this therapeutic document. They send it over to me. I either approve it or make changes, and then they send it to everybody in their group, okay? So it describes what happened in the group sessions in a language that encourages the client, okay? So it's both a case note and a process note. And it's shared with the clients, unlike a usual case note. So then the documentation in itself is an intervention. And you're going to see in a minute what exactly that looks like. I have some examples. So there he is, the man, Yalom. I hope you all know who he is. He's probably the father of, maybe not the father of group therapy, but one of the biggies. And he was a Stanford psychiatrist, and he wrote up a book on the theory and practice of group psychotherapy. And he So he talked about how group can be a distinctly more effective intervention than individual counseling. Okay. My significant other, he, the one guy I could ever leave him for is Irv Yalom. Like he is, I adore Irv Yalom. He's like 95 now and he's very married and he lives in California. But still, I adore Irv Yalom. And I also, when I teach group, I have the students read a book that if you like group even a little bit, you will love this book. It's called The Schopenhauer Cure by Irv Yalom. And he's, now that he's up there in his years, he kind of is writing fiction books. And this is a fiction account of people who are in group counseling together. You can get it on Amazon for like $11. And it's just a great story. It's full of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, if you like those things. So Yalom would write these process summaries, and his recording system highlights the group process. It reinforces clients' understanding of the highly charged here and now group experiences. He breaks from traditional record-keeping methods. He combined his case notes with a process note where he talks not just about what happened, but what the process was like. How did people appear? Who talked to who didn't talk at all, okay? And he would share this with the clients, and this was to reinforce client change. So there's some language principles that if these don't make a ton of sense right now, we're gonna get to some examples and it'll be more clear when you see examples. So we're deconstructing the subjugated self by externalizing the problems, okay? And what that means is to explore the difficulties faced by the client in a way that leaves room for change. We give the problem human characteristics, and you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. And we contextualize the problem. We look at the cultural forces that feed into that problem. We search for exceptions to the problem. When are the times that the client act differently, okay? When are the times that the client was able to act in a way that they wanted to act, rather than falling onto some behavior patterns that have not served them very well? So we find underlying events that don't fit the current problem, but represent behavior that will show previously unnoticed client strengths. We maintain a not knowing position, okay? We use the language to foster members' self-examination and honor their expertness in their own lives. Everyone is an expert in their own life. And this is done by replacing assumptions with wonders, using language like, I wonder, could it be, okay? And ask questions to know more about what's happened or what's been said. And then we internalize personal agency by attributing positive intentionality, which is helping clients see themselves as responsible for the positive events in their life. By legitimizing their feelings, which means validating. By plotting members as active change agents. By crediting environmental influences, which is helping clients trace back the negative behaviors of their past, and by punctuating competency, okay? So I want to talk 1 minute about this idea of validation, because it's really, I emphasize that a lot when I teach. So what does that mean to you? What does it mean to validate somebody?
Essentially like hearing their story and listening to what their truth is. It might not be our truth, but hearing their truth and then helping them kind of navigate through the world with their truth.
Beautiful, Heidi. That is great. And so in I want to just show you something here. Okay, so maybe you all probably have heard of John Gottman. He was an MIT mathematician who then got into psychology, and he said, you know what, I bet I can create a mathematical equation or an algorithm to predict who gets divorced and who stays together. Okay, so he brought 3,000 couples into what he called his love lab, and he videotaped them for 1 hour. And they were informed, they were just told to talk about some problem in their relationship. And then he and his team went and scored the interactions that they saw, like based on what you see below. If there was an expression of joy, they would add 4 points. For example, if there was an expression of disgust, they would subtract 3. And then some number would, if the client reached some number, I don't know what it was, they would predict that that client would stay married, okay? So they contacted all of these clients 15 years later. If they had watched 15 minutes of them talking, they were 90% accurate in figuring out who would stay married and who divorced, okay? And if they watched the full hour, that accuracy shot up to 95%. So what were the positives that they looked for? Well, joy, humor, affection, validation, interest. But over time, validation has really kind of, validation has become really the one that rose to the top. And validation can really be thought of as the glue that holds relationships together. So I don't know if y'all ever heard of dialectical behavior therapy by Marsha Linehan. She talks about how some people go on to have emotional or psychiatric problems because they grow up in what she called the invalidating environment. And the invalidating environment is one where the child is told that the inner world of his thoughts, his ideas are somehow invalid, inappropriate, incorrect, okay? So would one of you I want to show you what the invalidating environment looks like. Would one of you be willing to share just a minor frustration or problem that you encountered today?
I can, I guess, since I talk too much.
No, I appreciate it so much, Heidi. Thank you.
I would say, so my biggest frustration, like I said, one of the pieces of my role that I do is our young people can go through a diversion. So a lot of the cases that I work with are 5th degree domestic assault. A lot of the families that I work with are single family homes. And so it's young boys that are coming through this program essentially. And the moms are just kind of needing extra supports. These young men are taller in stature and kind of bigger than their mom. And when it could be a verbal altercation or physical, typically it's verbal, but they're calling essentially the police to help, maybe have a conversation, and just kind of calm the situation down. However, what they don't know is in the state of Minnesota, one person has to be removed from the home. So actually their child is then removed from the home. So I had a conversation with the county attorney's office today, kind of saying, what can we do collaboratively to get into the communities, to educate the communities, to let them know that once they call 911, it's actually out of the parents' hands. And they seem open to the idea, but I just think it's frustrating because people don't know.
Oh yeah, wow. So they pick up 911 not knowing that what the consequence is going to be, and that's pretty significant if the is removed.
Right, and then also their young person is actually shackled. And back to our JDC, and then shackled once again to where they come to our agency. And so that's like super traumatizing, and people don't know that that's going to actually happen to their young person. So a lot of things happen out of like a verbal altercation within the home.
I see. Wow. Thank you so much, Heidi. I am not going to use you as an example because that's like really important work you're doing, and that's really pretty serious what you're talking about. But usually when I do this exercise, somebody will say like, oh, I spilled coffee on myself. And I'll say something like, I don't think that really happened. Or, well, it was your fault if you would be more careful. Or, this is just like you getting all upset over nothing. And those are all examples of what the invalidating is like. And hopefully, I might have sounded like some of your parents. I kind of sound like my parents in a way, but saying like, oh, it's all in your head. It wasn't that bad. You're always acting, you're always getting worked up. That's the invalidating environment. And we know that this invalidating environment can really set a person up for some difficulties. Alrighty, so what does this look like in a therapeutic document? This was one a student actually just turned in this week, and I thought she did a good job of this kind of writing. So keep in mind this writing is then shared with everybody in the group. So in this particular scenario, one of the group members, she has 5 kids, and one of those kids has very, very severe behavioral issues, such that like the other kids have to have an escape plan of which neighbor's house they'll go to if the older one starts, becoming violent. Boy, this is kind of similar to Heidi, what you're describing, actually. And so this group member is divorced, and her ex-husband is supposed to have this older child with him, but he doesn't come through a lot. So what the group leader wrote was, while this is a complex problem that doesn't have an easy solution, I wonder what Amy can do, Amy is the woman, can do to decrease the weight that she is carrying in her day-to-day routine. She's a strong, educated, resourceful woman who has been managing her family of 5 kids, one of whom has special needs. I wonder if Amy is submitting to the voice of weakness when she has exhibited the opposite pattern for most of her life. I wonder what would happen if Amy allowed herself to recognize her power. So you can see this is totally different than the kind of case note you would be trained to write in an agency. And so the hope is when Amy reads this, she sees how others view her as strong and resourceful. So in this scenario, the client states that she does not, this was a client who worries, like she really worries about disagreeing with people because she thinks they won't like her. So her name was Jada, and Jada offered her empathy at the difficulty of Bill's situation, but did not agree with other group members that adding more to his plate was the way to go. This was significant because Jada stated she's had difficulty expressing opinions that did not agree with those around her, yet she was able to do this in a very respectful manner. We can see this is finding an exception to the problem. This was a time that she did not act in a way that has been how she's acted before, okay? And then I'm excited to see how masterfully Jada reclaimed her own voice. This was an example of a client who barely speaks during group. We'll call her Kendra. Kendra was quiet, but when asked her thoughts by Lucy, without hesitation, Kendra offered the idea of self-care practice to help eliminate stress. I'm amazed at the out-of-the-box thinking Kendra exhibits. I wonder what it would be like if Kendra allowed herself to speak up without being prompted. Further, I wonder if the group realizes how much Kendra brings to each session. So I'm going to talk for a second. Remember I was saying Irv Yalom said that, and you guys probably know this already, but Irv Yalom said that group therapy can be effective in ways that individual therapy will never do. And he called these his therapeutic factors. So if one of them is installation of hope, he said that people gain a sense of hope by watching other group members be successful in goals and in their lives. And Irv Yalom said that faith in a treatment mode can itself be therapeutically effective. So I always like to say that when clients can go through a lot, but if they have a sense of hope that their situation will improve, that's going to really take them a long way in growing out of something or getting past something. Universality, this is the understanding, the realization that everybody has problems. So often when people are dealing with mental health conditions, they might be very isolated from much needed social support. So some patients, because of their extreme social isolation, have a heightened sense of uniqueness. In everyday life, they neither learn about others' similar feelings and experiences, nor avail themselves to the opportunity to confide in and ultimately be validated and accepted by others. Okay, another therapeutic factor is imparting information. So didactic instruction about mental health, mental illness, and general psychodynamics given by the therapist, as well as advice, suggestions, or direct guidance from either the therapist or other patients. So like if we were all in a group for homeless people, it could be that Tanisha said, hey, you know what? On Fridays, the First Baptist Church on Main Street gives out a free lunch. Great, that's information that can benefit all of us that we might not have had previously. Primary family recapitulation, this is my favorite one. It's a mouthful, but it basically means that by virtue of growing up in a family, we all walk away with something, some issue, some problem. And being in a group kind of recreates being in a family, okay? Because there are leaders who we can see as authority figures. There's other members that we might see of as siblings. And so sometimes the way we felt in our family of origin, we feel that way in group again. But the difference is now we have the opportunity to try out new behaviors and kind of reconceptualize this, undo the way that things were in our family. So what Yalom said is that fixed roles must constantly be explored and challenged, and ground rules for investigating relationships and testing new behaviors will be constantly encouraged. Development of socializing techniques. So this is basic, good old-fashioned social learning. It's the development of basic social skills, and it's a therapeutic factor that operates in all therapy groups. Imitative behavior. So sometimes in group, a member will see another member deal with a problem in a way that that member never thought of. And they might try that out on their own, okay, and have some success. So group therapists influence the communicational patterns in groups by modeling certain behaviors. So as a leader, you might model self-disclosure, you might model support. Interpersonal learning. This is therapeutic factors like insight, working through transference, corrective social experiences, and the social microcosm. So the social microcosm, as you probably know, is that group is a very small version of what your whole world is like. So the kind of problems you face in your life outside a group are likely to show up in group. The group is just a very condensed version of your bigger social world. Group cohesiveness is just the closeness of group members. So groups with a greater sense of solidarity or we-ness, they value the group more highly, and they're going to defend it both against internal and external threats. Catharsis is just good old-fashioned letting it out, letting your emotions out. But in a group, you're having your emotions, they're being, other people are witnessing you share your emotions, okay? Existential factors are just realizations of things like every person alive will eventually die. Like the guy said at my dad's funeral that the statistic in death is 1 in 1. If we're alive at some point, we're going to die. And, when I think about existential counseling, to me, I think of like this idea that really any one of us can commit suicide, right, on any given day. But by deciding to not commit suicide and to stay alive and to stay in the game of life, you have a responsibility to lead a life that has meaning and purpose, okay? So what we did with what we've been collecting data on now for a little while is how, if students used this therapeutic document, if they read therapeutic documents that other students read, would they be more likely to experience Yalom's curative factors? And I'm just going to show you what we found in our data. So I'm just bringing you over to SurveyMonkey, and this is our data. So this is the question I asked, and this is the answers we received. By reading or writing the therapeutic document, I felt a sense of hope about my situation or circumstance. So you can see that more than 40% agreed, and another almost, well, yeah, 40% strongly agreed on that one. And there's always one person, one person strongly disagreed. By reading or writing the therapeutic document, I realized that I was not alone in having struggles or challenges. And you can see the majority of respondents strongly agreed with this, that they were able to see that others have struggles or challenges. By reading or writing the therapeutic document, I learned an idea or some advice that I had not thought of before. And here again, almost everybody strongly agreed or agreed on this one. By reading or writing the therapeutic document, I had a sense that I helped or supported another group member. And again, almost 55% strongly agreed, with another 40-some% agreeing. By reading or writing the therapeutic document, I was able to think differently about my family of origin, or I was better to understand something from my childhood. So this goes to that primary family recapitulation, and this is the one we didn't expect to see much agreement from. About 5% disagreed, about 25% were neutral, but some people did strongly agree. By reading or writing the therapeutic document, I learned a new way or ways of interacting with others that allowed me to connect in more meaningful ways in my life. And over half strongly agreed on this one. By reading or writing the therapeutic document gave me ideas for new coping skills in my life. So we see just about 60% strongly agreeing there. Through the therapeutic document, I gained respectful interpersonal feedback from others. 60% strongly agreed. I felt closer to other group members as a result of reading or writing the therapeutic document. A lot of strongly agrees, but we did also have some disagrees on this. We had 2 people who disagreed and 1 that was neutral. When reading or writing the therapeutic document, I felt a release of anger or sadness. This was one that we didn't expect to see much agreement on, and it looks like 1 person strongly agreed, 8 disagreed, 11 were neutral. Reading or writing the therapeutic document promoted a greater sense of existential factors, freedom, responsibility, etc. We had some strongly agree, and also some neutral on this one. So that was the research of our data. Some of the, it's survey data, so it's definitely not perfect. And we can't always draw conclusions based just on survey data. So what kind of questions, if any, do you all have about groups or therapeutic documents or anything else?
Dr. E, do we touch on this in our coursework? And if so, what course is this in?
What school are you at?
We're at the Chicago school.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. I don't work for Chicago school, so I don't know, but I would think it would be the group counseling course. And that's a K-CREP core course, so that's something you would have to have.
Heidi, I think you were trying to ask me that question, except I'm a student and I'm just signed on as Dr. E so I can record this presentation.
Oh, okay, thanks.
It didn't even occur to me, Heidi, that that's what you meant. Sorry.
But Laura is right. I'm actually currently in the group class right now. I think it's CM 543, if I'm not mistaken. And it's one of our core classes that we have to take.
Cool. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm from Chicago. I always knew the Chicago school. I really wanted to go there. I couldn't quite afford it, but I kind of wish I would have given it a try. I didn't realize though that they also have campuses in what, San Diego, Florida?
They have campuses almost everywhere now. They have a campus in San Diego. They have a campus in Irvine, in Los Angeles. They have one in Dallas. They have one in DC. I think they have one partnered with a school in New Orleans. I'm not sure what it's called. And then they also have the one that's in Chicago.
That's awesome. That's great. Wow. All right. Well, I know it's a little early, but that is all I have. So unless there's any other questions or comments, you guys have been a lovely group. If you want the PowerPoint, just shoot me an email. But I'm excited for you when you have group counseling. I believe it's a class that can change your life if you let it. I really do. How do they do the small group part, the experiential part at your school?
Was that question for me? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm not sure what you're asking. Like, how do we do small groups at residency?
Oh, you have a residency where you do it. Okay.
Yes. So the group course for the Chicago School is when residency 2 occurs. The first residency is during the helping skills course. And that's usually within the first year. So the second year would be the group course that I'm taking currently, and that includes residency 2. And then after that is when practicum and field work starts.
Awesome. How long are the residencies?
About 4 to 5 days long.
Oh, wow. And does everybody go to Chicago for those, or do they go just wherever?
Currently, they're all in Chicago, but I think they're trying to branch out to the different locations in California, but I don't think they've worked that out yet.
Nice. Very good. Okay, so you came down to Chicago for a residency, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember like about where you stayed?
I stayed across the street from the Chicago School at the Holiday Inn.
Do you remember what street that university's on?
North Wells Street.
Oh, that's a fun part of town. Wow. Well, good. Okay, you guys have been a delightful group. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best with your school. I hope you like fall in love with group. Read Yalom. He is a genius. So thank you all so much, and good luck with everything.